Resident Evil Requiem doesn't ease you into anything. From the moment Grace Ashcroft steps into Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, the game tells you exactly what kind of experience this is going to be. Every boss in this game is designed to break you in a different way, so today we're explaining all of them, starting with the one that teaches you the most important lesson in the entire game: stop shooting. The girl. Most first bosses in Resident Evil games teach you one thing: aim for the weak point, dump your ammo, watch the health bar drain. The girl throws all of that out the window. There is no health bar, there is no weak point, and if you waste your precious early game ammunition trying to fight her like a normal enemy, you're already dead. The girl is encountered by Grace inside the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, and she functions as a puzzle boss disguised as a horror encounter. She's repelled by light and attracted to sound. Every footstep you make, every door you slam, every panicked reload pulls her closer. Your only tool for survival is manipulating industrial light switches scattered throughout the facility, luring her into illuminated zones where she recoils and gives you just enough space to progress. Stay in the dark and she finds you. Make noise and she finds you faster. Here's where it gets really unsettling. You can't kill her. Not here. Not yet. She isn't a one-and-done encounter that the game lets you forget about. The girl returns for a final confrontation at the water treatment plant later in the game, reinforcing something Requiem wants you to understand from the very first hour. Threats in this world don't go away just because you survived them once. The community has drawn heavy comparisons between the girl and Lisa Trevor from the earlier games, and honestly, it's hard to argue. The relentless pursuit, the unkillable nature, the way she warps the entire atmosphere of every room she occupies. Players consistently rank her among the most frightening enemies in Requiem's entire roster, and that's saying something considering what comes later. But the girl isn't just scary, she's a design statement. She teaches you that Requiem rewards intelligence over firepower, patience over aggression. Every boss that follows builds on the foundation she establishes right here. And the next one, it builds on it by being the exact opposite. A wall of mutated flesh that wants nothing more than to crush you in a hallway. Chunk. Let's talk about the thing that looks like someone inflated a corpse with a bicycle pump and gave it legs. Chunk is a grotesque, bulbous mutant, with a head so oversized it shouldn't be able to stand upright, let alone chase you through the Rhodes Hill Care Center. But it does. And it's fast. Here's what makes Chunk genuinely interesting as a boss encounter. You fight it twice across both campaigns, but the experience is completely different depending on who you're playing as. Leon encounters Chunk in the attic, and the game literally hands you the MSBG 500 pump action shotgun right before the fight starts. That's Capcom saying, here's your tool, now figure it out. The shotgun tears into Chunk's massive head, which serves as the primary weak point, and the attic space gives you just enough room to kite the thing around while unloading shells into its face. Grace's version is a different beast entirely. She encounters a separate Chunk variant in the East Wing, with significantly fewer resources at her disposal. Defeating it rewards the I Spy charm, which is a nice incentive, but the fight itself is brutal compared to Leon's version. Community consensus is pretty unanimous on this one. Leon's encounter is significantly easier because of his firepower advantage. But here's where it gets weird. Despite being one of the most physically massive enemies in the entire game, Chunk can squeeze through narrow corridors. That should be impossible. Your brain sees this enormous, bloated creature and immediately assumes doorways and tight spaces are safe zones. They're not. Chunk will compress itself through gaps that look way too small for its body, and that violation of spatial logic creates a specific kind of unease that pure size alone never could. Smart players figured out how to flip this against it, though. You can trap Chunk in doorways and confined spaces to temporarily immobilize it while dealing sustained damage. The arena itself becomes the weapon. It's essentially an environmental strategy tutorial disguised as a boss fight, teaching you that Requiem rewards players who think about space and positioning rather than just unloading ammunition. The whole encounter is loud, chaotic, and deliberately overwhelming. But if you think a screaming meat balloon is unsettling, wait until you see what's lurking in the deeper parts of this facility. Blisterborn. This is the fight where Resident Evil Requiem stops holding your hand and starts slapping you with it. The Blisterborn is a hulking infected monstrosity covered head to toe in bright orange cysts, and every single one of those cysts is a weak point. Sounds simple, right? Shoot the glowing bits, boss dies, move on. But here's the thing. This fight is designed to punish that exact instinct. You first encounter the Blisterborn in the chapel during Leon's campaign, and it shows up again later in the East Raccoon City sewage facility for round 2. Both times, the core mechanic is the same, and both times, it will catch you off guard if you're not ready. The Blisterborn can mutate nearby zombie corpses into fast-moving blister head variants mid-fight. That means every second you spend not finishing this thing off, the room gets more dangerous. Corpses you walked past without thinking suddenly become sprinting nightmares lunging at your face. But wait, it gets worse. Destroying the cysts actually spawns reinforcements, and those reinforcements can themselves transform into even stronger variants if they're positioned near active pustules on the Blisterborn's body. So if you go full aggro and start popping every cyst you can see as fast as possible, you're literally flooding the room with enemies. The fight actively punishes tunnel vision. You can't just unload into this thing and hope for the best. The basic swing attacks can be parried with Leon's hatchet, which feels great until you mistake a charge attack for a regular one. Charge attacks cannot be parried, period. You eat the full knockback, lose positioning, and suddenly you're surrounded by blister heads with zero breathing room. Learning to read the difference between those two animations is non-negotiable. The community has been actively debating the optimal cyst destruction order, and the consensus is surprisingly specific. Back cysts first, front cysts last. The reasoning is practical. Once the Blisterborn starts staggering and repositioning in its later phases, getting clean shots on the back becomes nearly impossible. Take them out early while you still have the angle. For the spawned enemies, grenade and explosive canister strategies dominate. A well-placed explosive clears the ads without wasting precious rifle or shotgun ammo on targets that aren't the actual boss. And that's really what this fight is testing. Resource management under pressure. Players who panic and dump their ammo into every blister head that spawns will walk out of this encounter with almost nothing left. Players who stay disciplined, prioritize the main target, and use environmental explosives for crowd control will barely feel it. The Blisterborn is the moment Requiem draws a line in the sand. Everything before this was a warm-up, but if you think a room full of mutating corpses is bad, wait until you see what's crawling around the NF building. Titan Spinner. If you have arachnophobia, this game does not care about you. There's no accessibility toggle, no low detail spider mode, no option to replace the Titan Spinner with something less nightmarish. I bring this up because this thing isn't some small, creepy crawly hiding in a corner. It's colossal. It fills entire rooms, and you have to fight it for a very long time. Leon encounters the Titan Spinner in the NF building during his Raccoon City segment, and it immediately announces itself as the most visually extreme enemy in the entire game. Massive armored carapace, twitching legs that span the width of corridors, and an abdomen pulsing with a grotesque cyst that serves as one of only two weak points on its body. The other is its mouth. Everything else is near bulletproof, and that's exactly why this fight breaks people. Every boss before the Titan Spinner can be beaten by shooting it enough. The chunk has a big head you blast with a shotgun. Blisterborn has cysts you pop in sequence. Mr. X has an exposed heart. Your instinct by this point is clear. Find the weak spot, shoot the weak spot, win. The Titan Spinner takes that instinct and punishes it. Instead, the fight revolves around two explosive fuel tanks positioned in the multi-level arena. Detonating these tanks deals massive damage and forces the Titan Spinner to expose its mouth and abdominal cyst for a brief damage window. That window is your only real opportunity to hurt it. You have to learn the arena, learn the timing, and execute under pressure. But here's where it gets genuinely disorienting. The Titan Spinner doesn't stay on the ground. It crawls up walls, transitions between platforms, and attacks from ceilings and angles you didn't think were possible in a Resident Evil game. The arena is a maze of interconnected platforms and tight corridors, and the spider uses every single surface. The moment you think you've found a safe route, it's already above you, and while you're trying to track a building-sized spider crawling across the ceiling, it's spawning smaller spiderlings that drop onto the arena floor. These latch onto Leon's face and completely immobilize him, leaving you vulnerable to the main attacks. Ignore them and you're dead. Focus on them too long and you lose your damage window after a fuel tank detonation. This creates a two-tier threat system that no previous boss even attempts. You're juggling environmental puzzle solving, ad management, vertical spatial awareness, and precise weak point targeting, all simultaneously. The community widely considers this the most mechanically complex encounter in Requiem, and for good reason. It's the first fight that completely shuts down brute force as a viable strategy. But love it or hate it, the Titan Spinner represents a clear difficulty spike. It forces you to master the environment instead of your trigger finger, and that design philosophy is exactly what makes it memorable, even if it makes your skin crawl the entire time. But if a giant spider made you uncomfortable, wait until you see what Capcom dragged out of Resident Evil's past for the next encounter, Mr. X. If you played Resident Evil 2, you remember the sound. That slow, heavy footstep behind you. The panic of turning a corner and realizing he's already there. Requiem knows you remember, and it uses that that memory against you. Mr. X shows up during Leon's campaign in what might be the most emotionally loaded boss encounter in the entire game, not because of mechanical complexity, but because this fight is built entirely on nostalgia, and it earns every single second of it. The encounter is split into two completely distinct phases, and the contrast between them is the whole point. Phase 1 takes place inside the Raccoon Police Department, and you cannot win. That's not an exaggeration. There is no health bar to deplete, no weak point to exploit, no amount of ammunition that will stop him. Mr. X walks toward you with that same unstoppable presence he had in RE2, and your only option is to run. Find the exit, survive. The game strips Leon of everything that made him feel powerful and forces you back into the helpless survival horror mindset that defined the original encounter. Every bullet you waste here is a bullet you won't have later. But then phase 2 happens, and everything changes. You're pulled into an outdoor basketball court arena, and for the first time, Mr. X has a weakness. His chest is split open, exposing a massive, pulsing heart. That's your target. After spending the entire first phase running for your life, you finally get to fight back. And the shift from powerless to empowered hits different when you've genuinely been afraid for the last 10 minutes. Mr. X throws entire cars across the court like projectiles. His charged attacks hit devastatingly hard. But here's the kicker. They can be parried. Everything you learned fighting the Blisterborn about timing. Leon's hatchet parries gets tested here at significantly higher stakes. Nail the window, and you open counterattack opportunities to unload on that exposed heart. Miss it, and you're eating massive damage with limited healing to fall back on. Once you've dealt enough sustained damage, Mr. X staggers to his knees for melee finisher attacks that seal the deal. The game spent hours teaching you specific skills, and Mr. X is the exam. Now, the community is genuinely split on this one. RE2 veterans overwhelmingly love it. The two-phase structure mirrors the original game's progression from terror to triumph, and hearing those footsteps again in a modern engine just hits. For longtime fans, this is Requiem saying we remember too. But others argue that recreating Mr. X instead of designing something entirely new weakens the roster's identity. Why lean on legacy when original bosses like the Titan Spinner proved the team could create compelling encounters from scratch? Some players also note that the court's open layout actually makes Mr. X feel less threatened. More space to dodge means less pressure, and less pressure means less fear. Both sides have a point, but regardless of where you land, the design philosophy is undeniable. Phase 1 teaches you fear. Phase 2 lets you conquer it. That's not lazy nostalgia, that's structure. But if you think a tyrant with an exposed heart is as dangerous as Requiem gets, wait until you see what's growing in the walls of the ARC facility, Plant 43. After everything the Titan Spinner put you through, you'd expect the next boss to ramp things up even further. Plant 43 does not do that. And honestly, that might be the smartest design choice in the entire back half of the game. This thing is massive. Absolutely enormous mutated flora blocking the entrance to the ARC facility, and Leon has zero choice but to go through it. The visual presentation alone is intimidating. Thick, writhing vines stretching across the entire arena, two flanking heads snapping aggressively at anything that moves, and a central bud that pulses like it's breathing. First time you walk into this room, your brain immediately tells you this is going to be a nightmare, but it's not. Here's the thing about Plant 43. The central bud is the only weak point that actually matters, and it only takes damage when it's fully open. So the entire fight revolves around managing the flanking heads, staying mobile, and waiting for your window. That's it. The flanking heads snap at you for moderate damage if you get too close, but they're more of a positioning check than a genuine threat. Keep your distance, stay aware, and they barely touch you. The vine attacks are where you'd expect the real danger, but they travel in completely straight lines toward whatever direction they're pointed when they launch. There is zero tracking, zero course correction. You see the vine orient itself, you step laterally, and it misses every single time. Compare that to the Titan Spinner's multi-phase chaos with spiderlings latching onto your face and armored weak points requiring explosive setups, and Plant 43 feels almost relaxing. Now, the finishing mechanic does echo what you've seen before. Two explosive tank containers are positioned beneath the plant, and once you've dealt enough damage to the central bud, those containers become your ticket to ending the fight. Shoot them, detonate them, and Plant 43 takes critical damage. If you handled the fuel tanks during the spider fight, this is second nature. Straightforward execution with no surprises. Community consensus backs this up completely. Plant 43 consistently ranks as one of the lower difficulty boss encounters in the entire game. Nobody's debating optimal strategies or arguing about overtuned attack windows. Players walk in, identify the pattern within 30 seconds, and execute cleanly. It's a difficulty valley, not a spike, and that's clearly intentional. The game game just put you through one of its most mechanically demanding fights with the Titan Spinner. Your ammo is probably hurting. Your healing items are thin. Plant 43 gives you a spectacle without draining your resources dry. It's a pacing reset disguised as a boss fight, letting you catch your breath and restock before the endgame. Because what's waiting on the other side of that RK facility entrance is Victor Gideon himself. And trust me, that fight demands every single resource you've been saving. Victor Gideon. Every boss in this game has been building to one man. Not a creature, not a mutation, a man. Victor Gideon is the reason Grace Ashcroft picked up a gun, the reason she joined the FBI, and the reason she's standing in the ruins of ARK with nothing left to loot. He murdered her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, at the Wrenwood Hotel in 2018. Then Grace's fire burned him right back. This isn't just a final boss. This is a reckoning 8 years in the making. But here's what makes Gideon genuinely fascinating. He's not some cackling madman chasing power for the sake of it. The man was an Umbrella Corporation researcher who watched his employer collapse into bankruptcy in 2003. Then quietly purchased Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center and spent the next 2 decades running T-virus experiments in secret. This game takes place 28 years after the Raccoon City destruction incident, and Gideon has been carrying that legacy forward almost the entire time. That's not impulsive. That's not chaotic. That's a man with a plan he believes in with every fiber of his being. And that plan is Elpis. Gideon's entire obsession revolves around freeing Elpis, a bioweapon project with direct ties to Oswell Spencer himself, but Gideon doesn't frame it as a weapon. He frames it as evolution, the next step for humanity. He genuinely, sincerely believes that what he's doing will elevate the entire species. And the game doesn't make it easy to just dismiss him as delusional. His arguments have internal logic. His conviction is absolute. That's what separates him from 90% of Resident Evil villains. Most of them want control. Gideon wants transcendence. The Spencer comparison is impossible to ignore, and the community has been all over it. Both men used Grace as a pawn, but for completely opposite philosophical reasons. Spencer hid Elpis away. Gideon wants to unleash it. They represent two sides of the same coin, one hoarding power, the other desperate to distribute it, and Grace is caught directly in the middle. Gideon functions as a darker ideological mirror to the franchise's foundational villain, and that kind of thematic layering is rare for this series. Visually, the man tells his own story. Despite being infected with the T-virus, Gideon retains his intelligence and enhanced physical strength. He wears goggles of his own design. He's a scientist who became his own experiment, and he's fully aware of it. There's zero panic in his transformation. He chose this. And then the fight happens. Gideon mutates into a nemesis-like creature for the final confrontation, and it's a 2-phase battle that will punish anyone who coasted through the earlier bosses. Phase 1 demands precise parry timing, the exact skill Mr. X drilled into you. Phase 2 introduces electrical abilities and environmental hazards that require the spatial awareness the Titan Spinner forced you to develop. His weak points demand the same prioritization logic you learned from Blisterborn. Every single mechanical lesson this game has taught you gets cashed in during this fight. Gideon isn't just the narrative climax. He's a cumulative skill test disguised as a boss encounter. Voiced by Anthony Byrne, the performance lands exactly where it needs to. There's weight behind every line, conviction behind every justification. The community response has been overwhelmingly positive, with many players calling Gideon one of the best original villains in recent Resident Evil history. And the debate that refuses to die is whether his motivations make him sympathetic or irredeemable. He has a body count that stretches across decades. Innocent people suffered and died in Rhodes Hill so he could chase his vision of human evolution. But he believes, truly believes, he's saving humanity. That tension is what makes him linger. The game gives you the gun. It lets you pull the trigger, but it never quite tells you he was entirely wrong. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.